Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Caitlin and I upload a whole bunch of different types of videos on this channel, mainly surrounding true crime and psychological cases, as well as a little bit of fashion and lifestyle sprinkled in where I can. Now for today's video I'm back with another unsolved case, and this one isn't the longest case by far, but it's very intriguing, and I think a lot of people have kind of thrown around potential theories about it online. It's definitely worth looking into if you're interested in hearing sort of some of the conspiracy theories behind it, just because it's one of them where it could potentially go a lot deeper than it seems, and there's just not a lot of information that's kind of known about it. So yes, today's case is that of Jonathan Luna, and if you want to hear about the details then keep on watching and we shall just get started. Jonathan Paul Luna was born on October the 21st in the year of 1965 in the Patterson Housing Project in the South Bronx of New York City. Luna came from a dual heritage background, with his mother being African American and his father was from the Philippines. In his late teens he began studying at the Fordham University, where he graduated with his undergraduate degree, and then from here he went and studied at the University of North Carolina School of Law. Following his studies he had a number of different employers, including Arnold and Peter Law Firm and the Federal Trade Commission. In 1993 he married his partner Angela Hopkins, and the pair soon grew their family to have 2 kids. For a number of years he became a successful prosecutor in Brooklyn, but then he moved to Baltimore in Maryland to receive the position of the Assistant U.S. Attorney. And Jonathan's case takes place on the 4th of December in 2003. At the time, Jonathan was working on a case involving 2 men who had allegedly been found dealing large quantities of heroin through their music label's studio, as well as one of the men being taken to trial on an additional murder charge. He left his house that day to continue working on the case in his office. It's known that at around 9 p.m. that night he rang a colleague of his to discuss the details of the case and the potential plan for them to offer the pair a plea deal, following which he said that he was about to head back home. Despite saying this to his colleague, the office's system stated that he didn't actually leave work until around 11:38 p.m. One distinctive factor in this case as well is that Jonathan had left his glasses behind in his office, without which he wouldn't actually be able to drive. It is next known that at 1 a.m. the following morning his car was in Delaware. There was a credit card transaction here that meant he'd withdrawn around $200 out of his bank account. Following here he'd headed to New Jersey and Pennsylvania, and this is where the same credit card was used once again. His electric toll collection ticket was then used on the journey past Delaware to pay for the toll tickets. Then, at around 5:30 a.m, an employee of, I apologise if I mispronounced this, Sensenig and Weaver in Denver, Pennsylvania, had come across an unknown car parked outside the back of the building, parked head down into a stream. When they decided to take a closer look, they noticed blood smears inside the car. There was a large pool of blood on the floor in the back of the car, as well as on the seats. And they'd also noticed that there was a relatively large amount of cash strewn about the inside of the car. Underneath the engine, in the creek, were the remains of Jonathan Luna. He was found wearing a full suit with a black coat, and his ID badge had been on a lanyard around his neck. It was determined that he had died as a result of 36 stab wounds, and the weapon responsible being the penknife that he carried on himself. There were also gashes on his hands, scrotum, and across his throat. However, it was believed that he had survived this initial attack, but because of his extensive injuries and the way that he'd fallen, he'd actually died as a result of drowning in the creek. So there was a lot of disagreement regarding the nature of his death. So the medical examiner who'd been working on the initial case believed that it should have been a homicide ruling. However, there were many other people at the time who had shared their belief that it should have been a suicide ruling, which is a very interesting perspective on the scenario. So these latter claims stem from these rumours that things in Jonathan's life maybe weren't as perfect as they might have seemed. Some people believed that his career had actually been struggling quite severely, and he'd managed to get himself in some financial issues as a result, while others speculated the possibility of him being involved in an affair. There was also an allegation thrown around that he was being investigated for having some involvement in the theft of $36,000 when working as a prosecutor on a case involving a bank robbery. Despite all of these claims and allegations being thrown around, there was little success regarding providing an understanding as to what had actually happened to Jonathan Luna. In the following year, the FBI had actually released a statement that they could guarantee he had been alone the entire time between leaving his office and where his body was found, and so their investigation headed towards the death being a suicide ruling. The main argument against this comes, as I said, from the medical examiner who had been working on the initial case. According to this medical examiner, the wounds to the hands, throat and scrotum are extremely inconsistent with a suicide ruling. It was also pointed out that he would have struggled drastically to be able to drive himself to the location where his remains were discovered, as, like I said, he'd left his glasses in his office, which he absolutely needed to drive. Many people also believe it to be strange that if he'd left it on his own accord, he wouldn't have left his mobile phone behind in the office. In terms of the findings inside the car, these all seem relatively inconsistent with the suicide ruling as well. Considering his remains were found outside of the car, what exactly would be the explanation for the pool of blood that had been found in the back seat? And it seems like all of these points kind of point towards there being someone else inside the vehicle at the time. Some sources have reported that some of the blood found inside the car had not actually matched the DNA of Jonathan Luna, meaning that it seems even more likely that someone else had been inside the car and travelling with him at the time. However, there aren't really a lot of details regarding this finding, so it's unclear as to how kind of reliable or valid these claims are. One of the most prominent theories regarding what had happened to Jonathan Luna that I could find during my research had been kind of a kidnapping scenario, really. So it may have been that either an assailant had threatened or even coerced Jonathan into leaving his office and heading towards his car. While the pair were travelling, Jonathan had perhaps attempted to defend himself using the penknife that he was carrying on him, which would explain the traces of another person's blood being found inside the car, but ultimately the assailant had overpowered him. However, another proposed theory was relating to a mistress or even his own wife. This theory suggests that he had received a message while he was inside his office working from perhaps a mistress asking to meet him downstairs in the garage of his office. He would have left his glasses and his phone inside the office as he hadn't planned on being out for too long and he hadn't really planned on going anywhere. But when he arrived, the other person pulled out a weapon and threatened him to drive. They then forced him to travel a bit and pull out some cash from his bank account before continuing on with their journey. He had perhaps pulled out his penknife to try and scare them from what they were about to do, and somehow they managed to turn it on him and defend themselves. And many people believe that the evidence of there being 36 stab wounds supports this proposed scenario, as such an extensive amount of wounds would suggest that the attacker had done so in a fit of rage, and likely the attack on his genitals followed the implication of a scorned lover. But all of these, like I said, are just proposed theories. We don't really know what exactly happened. A lot of it is just speculation, and people can only really kind of say what they think, maybe their gut feeling, a proposed scenario, as much as, you know, they do seem logical. We won't really know how accurate any of them are unless something else comes about in the investigation. So yeah, that is everything I have today to discuss on the Jonathan Luna case. Let me know your thoughts down below. As always, I'm always interested in hearing your guys' opinions and your theories and everything, as well as if you have any case requests, please leave them down below. I hope you guys are all doing well. I hope you're all staying safe in these troubling times. I don't really get much of a chance to talk to you guys on here, but I hope everyone's doing okay, and I'm sending you all my love, and I'll see you guys very, very soon for another video. Thanks for watching. Bye.